السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله على إحسانه والشكر له على توفيقه وامتنانه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله داعي إلى رضوانه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه. أما بعد، يا ربي إن عظمت ذنوبي كثرة فلقد علمت بأن عفوك أعظم، إن كان لا يرجوك إلا محسن فبمن يلوذ ويستجير المجرم. أدعوك ربي كما أمرت تضرعا، فإذا رددت يدي فمن ذا يرحم. ما لي إليك الوسيلة إلا الرجاء وجميل عفوك ثم أني مسلم. إخواني في الله, we are continuing with the history series regarding the history of the Muslims in Andalus, Muslim Spain and Portugal, a history of over 800 years. We as Muslims from the Hijri calendar, we are currently in the year 1445. So 800 years of our history is more than 2/3 of our history, and this is an important phase of our history, the history of the Muslims in Andalus. In the previous lecture, we were talking about a new empire that was formed, the empire that was known as the Dawla AlMuwahidun, that was formed in the 6th century of the Hijri calendar. In summary, what we took previously, the ulama had formed an empire that was known as the Dawla Al-Murabitun first, the Murabitun. Then in the year 512, this man Muhammad ibn Tumirt al-Masmudi, he starts his revolution in the year 512 of the Hijri calendar. And he's very harsh and severe with regards to Amr bil Ma'arufi wa Nahi anil Munkar, commanding that which is good and forbidding that which is evil. Yes, he's from the scholar, but he has a lot of weird and heretical ideologies. So he starts his revolution against the Murabitun in the year 512 of the Hijri calendar. He passes away after a bloody period in the year 524 of the Hijri calendar. From the year 524 to the year 541, the leader of the Muwahidun, who is still fighting the Murabitun, is Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali. Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali manages to defeat the Murabitun, enters the city of Marrakesh, and he massacres the Murabitun in Marrakesh in the year 541 of the Hijri calendar. In the year 541, the Dawla that we're talking about tonight, the Muwahidun, they start their new empire from the year 541, led by this man, Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali. And we spoke in detail about his attributes. He used to be excellent as a leader, but he used to have the aib of spilling blood. He led the Muslims from the year 541 of the Hijri calendar to the year 558 of the Hijri calendar. From the year 558 of the Hijri calendar to the year 580, his son, Yussuf ibn Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali, was the leader of the Muslims. And the greatest enemy of the Muslims, this period, from the time of the Murabitun, everything related to Andalus has a connection with North Africa. Andalus and North Africa are connected, and the people of Andalus are mostly ruled from North Africa. So you need to know the history of North Africa for you to understand the history of Andalus. So the greatest enemy of the Muslims at that time was the kingdom of Portugal that we mentioned, that was to the west, the southwest of Andalus, a new kingdom. And the second was the kingdom of Castile that had the capital city, the former city that was owned by the Muslims, the city of Castile. So Yussuf ibn Abdul Mu'min was the leader from the year 558 to the year 580 of the Hijri calendar. Then one day, he was not a person who consults, so he was fighting the Portuguese in Portugal. He fights them in a fortress, in a castle. 6 of them attack him, or 7 or 10 of them. He manages to kill 6, and he himself is killed. Amata insha'Allah nahsabu wallahu hasibu. His son, Ikhwani fillah, takes over, and is the person we're talking about in our tonight lecture. His name is Abu Yussuf. Memorize this name, it's one of the greats of Islamic history. Abu Yussuf Ya'qub AlMansoor Al-Muwahidi. I repeat, Abu Yussuf. Many brothers, mashallah, whenever they're called Ya'qub, they make sure to call their son Yussuf, the same way in the Quran. So you find many brothers whose name is Ya'qub, you find that the first son Allah blesses them with, they called Yussuf. So Abu Yussuf Ya'qub Al-Mansoor Al-Muwahidi. There's also another Abu Yussuf we're going to study tomorrow, inshallah. He's called Abu Yussuf Ya'qub Al-Mansoor Al-Marini. So there are 2 people with the same name. Abu Yussuf Ya'qub Al-Mansoor Al-Muwahidi, we're taking tonight. And tomorrow night we're taking Abu Yussuf Ya'qub Al-Mansoor Al-Marini. 2 greats of Islamic history. So this young man, He became the ruler of the Muslims in this land, North Africa, West Africa, and Andalus in the year 580 of the Hijri calendar, when his father died suddenly in Portugal. He was only 25 years of age. We mentioned previously that the youth have played a great role in Islamic history. From the time the Prophet ﷺ was on his deathbed, he commands an army to go fight the Romans. And he keeps Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, keeps the greats of the Muhajirun and Ansar. And he makes the leader of this army a dark-skinned young boy, Usama ibn Zayd, who was only 17 years of age. He was the commander of the army. And when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu became the Khalifa, he made sure, regardless of the Arabs apostating and so many problems happening in society and so many threats, he made sure that this army comes out of Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu. You look at greats. India was conquered by Muhammad ibn al-Qasim al-Thaqafi rahimahullah in the 90s of the Hijri calendar. All these Muslims, the largest population of Muslims is India. It's India. It's not even Indonesia, because India was divided into 3 countries, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Then you can think now they come number 2, number 3, number 4. No, number 1, if you count the whole Indian peninsula, this man, young man, Muhammad bin Qasim al-Thaqafi. Tariq ibn Ziyad. In the history of Andalus, we mentioned Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, Abdurrahman al-Nasir. So the youth have played a great part in our history. And more so this young man, Abu Yussuf Yaqub AlMansoor AlMuwahidi. He becomes the leader of the Muslims in the year 580 of the Hijri calendar. 580 of the Hijri calendar. He led from the year 580 to the year 595 of the Hijri calendar. Ikhwani fillah, this is known as the golden age of the Muwahidun. Ikhwani fillah, this man, he raised the flag of the Muslims with regards to jihad very high. Number 2, he made sure that people are commanded al-amru bil ma'ruf wal nahy 'anil munkar billati hiya ahsan. Commanding people to do good and forbidding them to do evil in a proper manner, in an excellent manner, with a good character. Sometimes, we mentioned in the previous lecture, sometimes you can command good, but because your approach is not correct, the person leaves the good, not because of the message, but because of the approach of the messenger. So he commanded good and prohibited evil. He made sure, ikhwani fillah, that there was justice in the land. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives victory to an ummah, even if it's a kafir ummah, if there's justice in that ummah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will defeat a nation, even if it is a Muslim nation, if there's injustice in that society. So he removes injustice. And from the things he did to remove injustice, he made sure the law was applicable to all. Even if it's own family members, his relatives, if someone steals, if someone does a crime, they are punished the same. There is equality when it comes to Sharia. He raised the status of the ulama very high. He says the ulama do not need to go look and spend their time in the market colliding and in business with other people. Let me give ulama a permanent salary, very high salary, so that they can spend their time teaching the ummah, enlightening the ummah. Also, Yuhani Fillah, he started engaging a lot in research of medicine and engineering. He built the city of Rabat. If you know the city of Rabat in Morocco, he's the one who he built. He built a lot of mosques. He built so many hospitals. He planted a lot of plants. He spread justice on the land, Ikhwani Fillah, and he fought the people who were selling alcohol or manufacturing alcohol or buying alcohol. He fought them. He bought the books of the philosophers. He made sure that the scholars of repute will be respected. He used to follow the madhab of Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri. He used to memorize the Quran. He was a scholar of hadith. He was a scholar of fiqh. This man was a worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will lead the Muslims in salah. The 5 prayers, the leader of the Muslims will lead them in the mosque. The same way, remember the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr, Umar, the first khulafa, they used to lead the Muslims in the mosque. He used to go on the roads and meet the poor ladies and the poor people, and he listens to their problems and he serves them. But because he was not a leader, he saw himself as a servant of the people. On the day of Eid al-Adha, he gave over 70,000 goats as sadaqah to the poor people. This was a man of the people of Khanifillah, and he was only 25 years of age. Khanifillah, in the year 585 of the Hijri calendar, as he was fighting in Andalus to help the Muslims, Andalus, fighting the kingdom of Castile and the kingdom of Portugal. These are the 2 big enemies in Andalus. One of the Muslim groups, the tribe called Bani Ghaniya, they revolted. In the Balearic Islands and in Tunisia, they caused a great revolution, and they're almost coming out of the fold of the Muwahidun. And this is a problem with our history. Whenever Ikhwani Fillah we revolt and we have civil war, the end result is us, we are the ones who lose. So he leaves all the jihad in Andalus. He goes back to give stability and security to these lands. When he gives stability and security to these lands, Portugal takes advantage of this, and they enter one of the cities of the Muslims and they expel all the Muslims. And they rape women, they enslave women, they do a lot of ma'asi and fawahish and mubiqat, things that destroy. And they are about to reach the city of Sevilla. Meantime, Abu Yaqub, he has to fight this revolution. So he fights the revolution and he stabilizes everything. Then immediately he has to come back to protect the Muslims of Andalus. So he thinks, what is the best way? This is a very young man. He thinks, what is the best way to help the Muslims Andalus? He says, let me make a peace agreement between myself and the kingdom of Castile. So he sends an envoy to Castile and they sign a hudna, a peace agreement. The maximum allowed Islamically for a peace agreement between Muslims and non-Muslims is 10 years. They say 10 years, 10 months, and 10 days. That's the maximum allowed. So he signs a peace agreement for 10 years between himself and Castile. There will be no war amongst them, so that he can get time to fight the main enemy, the ones who hated Islam the most during this period, and that was the kingdom of Portugal. So he goes by himself and he fights the kingdom of Portugal, and he manages to rescue all these lands that were taken by Portugal, and he's almost defeating them. The kingdom of Castile, they break their treaty and they start attacking Muslim lands, killing Muslims, enslaving Muslims, taking their property. And this is something, Khanifillah, that is in the entire history of these people. Europe especially, or non-Muslims especially, they will never keep their word when it comes to treaties. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوَ كُلَّمَا أَعْهَدُ أَهْدَ نَبَذَهُ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ. Every time they keep a treaty, they always break it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُمْ لَا أَيْمَانَ لَهُمْ. They do not keep their word. They do not keep their promise. You sign a gentleman agreement. You sign even this in the presence of witnesses. Even later on, we're going to see the Pope himself signed an agreement for the Muslims in Granada, and we ended up problems. So they never keep the peace agreement. This is a history lesson. So they attacked the Muslims. And the leader of Castile, Alfonso VIII, he writes a letter to the Muslims. He writes to this leader, Abu Yussuf Yaqub AlMuwahidi, insulting Islam and the Muslims, threatening the Muslims with war and destruction. When Abu Yussuf Yaqub, he looks at this letter, he gets very angry. He tears it and he writes on the back of it, ارجع إليهم فلنأتينهم بجنود لا قبل لهم بها. Go back to them. We shall come back. We shall meet them with armies that they cannot do anything about it. وَلَنُخْرِجَنَّهُمْ مِنْهَا أَذِلَّةً وَهُمْ صَاغِرُونَ. And we shall remove them from these lands humiliated, and they are lower than us. So he returned this letter. Then he took this letter, Ikhwanifillah, and started spreading around the Muslims all over the world. Ikhwanifillah, in this period, the Muslims were in a great period of joy. This 580, 590 period. This event is the year 590. 7 years ago, in the year 583 of the Hijri calendar, after a period of struggle, the Muslims were able to reconquer the city of Al-Quds. Masjid Al-Aqsa was taken from us, Ikhwanifillah, by the Crusaders. The crusade that was launched by Pope Alban from France, and they took over Jerusalem. They took over Al-Quds, Masjid Al-Aqsa. They used to keep pigs in Masjid Al-Aqsa. This was the first Qibla of the Muslims, was taken away from the Muslims for quite a while, almost a century. But then this great man, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, in the Battle of Hittin in the year 583 of the Hijri calendar, he defeated them. And the Muslims all over the world, they were feeling this, this Iman. They have gotten back the third Haram, the third great mosque. So this Iman was still there. So the Muslims are saying, now these people also, the same way they're giving us trouble here in the Middle East, in Jerusalem, is the same trouble they're giving us in Andalus. We are going to assist our brothers in Andalus. And this brought up a lot of passion with the Muslims in Andalus. So they gathered an army, Ikhwanifillah. In the year 591 of the Hijri calendar, the Muslims crossed over from Morocco. They crossed over Jabal Tariq into Andalus. They reach the city of Tulaytala. Just outside it, there's a fort known as Arak. A fort known as Arak, the 9th of Sha'ban, the year 591 of the Hijri calendar. The army of the Muslims is 200,000. One of the largest armies we've seen so far in Andalus. 200,000. And on this side, the king of Castile has sought help from the nearby kingdoms of Navarre and Leon, from England, from Germany, and from Holland. He has managed to gather an army of 225,000. These are the events of the year 591 of the Hijri calendar, one of the greatest battles in Islamic history, the Battle of Arak in the 9th of Sha'ban, the year 591 of the Hijri calendar. So the Muslims, 200,000, the non-Muslims, the Salibiyin, the Crusaders, 225,000, the 9th of Sha'ban. So Abu Yussuf AlMansoor AlMuwahidi, he starts a consultative meeting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُم. That the Muslims always, they have a shura, they consult, especially when it comes to affairs that يَعُمُّ الْبَلْوَى, it's affairs for the entire ummah. So he consults, says, what is your opinion? He seeks the opinion of all the people in the gathering, including of the people of Andalus, who never fight for themselves, always seek help from outside. So he seeks the opinion of the people of Andalus, led by Abu Abdullah ibn Sanadid. And they agree on a strategy or tactics for the battle that's going to come up, the Battle of Arak. So the Muslim army is 200,000. He decides 100,000 is the one that's going to fight. 100,000 is going to be hidden behind the hill. The same strategy they used in the Battle of Zallaqa, we mentioned previously, the Battle of Walj and other battles before. So 100,000 hidden behind the hill, 100,000 to face the 225,000. The army of the Muslims, since the days of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is a center that is known as the vanguard, and there is a right flank and there's a left flank. So the middle is called the qalb, the heart of the army. The middle is called the heart. So he puts his commander of that battle is called Abu Yahya ibn Hafs. He's the commander of this middle. Then the right side, he keeps the people of Andalus. And the left side, he keeps the Arabs. To fight this army of 225,000, led by Alfonso VIII, the king of Castile. So the battle begins, ikhwan fillah. The Nasara, or the Northerners, the Castile, the people of Leon, Navarre, all these Northern Europeans, they are on top of a hill initially. So the Muslims are downhill and these people are uphill. So they come down to fight the Muslims and the Muslims have to fight upwards. This is a clear disadvantage with regards to territory. The Art of War of that Chinese author always says you have to choose the location of a battle. It's very important. From the things that assist you to win a battle, you have to choose the location. Like the Prophet ﷺ made sure that the Battle of Badr, he chose a location that was beneficial for the Muslims and harmful for the Quraysh with regards to water. So you have to choose a battlefield, but this battlefield was disadvantageous to the Muslims. So the Nasara or the Salibiyin, they come from the hills downwards. They have that momentum. And every time they attack really harshly and they massacre many Muslims. Many Muslims lose their lives. The first attack, the second attack, the third attack. It's very difficult. One of the attacks, the commander of the army of that time, the one who was leading the center, Abu Yahya ibn Hafs, he was killed. When they saw him killed, the commander or the king of Castile, now he sees, the Muslims are defeated. He enters with 10,000 of his horsemen to finish off the battle. He wants to also, the glory of victory. So enters mutahammisan, with passion to finish off these Muslims. In the battle of Hanifillah, before the battle, I forgot also, they had brought many Jew businessmen. So the battlefield is going on, but on the side there are Jews who are observing. Why are the Jews observing this battle? The Jews of Hanifillah, in the entire history, they are the leaders when it comes to the finance, with money. All the banks right now, if you look at the wealthiest people, I don't know if Elon Musk is a Jew, but the wealthiest people are the Jews. All the history, they're the ones who control the financial system. So the Europeans, they brought these Jews so that when they finish the Muslims, they can sell the prisoners of war as slaves. These Jews had money, ready money to buy. So they were sure that these Muslims are going to be defeated. So the Muslims are utterly beaten. Abu Yussuf AlMansoor AlMuwahidi comes, talks to them, says, جَدِّدُوا نِيَّتَكُمْ, renew your iman wa akhlisu niyatakum. Remember, this is a place before Allah Azza wa Jal. Remember your intention, have ikhlas. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them a lot of morale. And the Muslims, they fight back. But it's difficult because the center has lost their leader and they're really struggling. The Maymana, the Andalusian, they support them and they support them thoroughly when this Alfonso VIII has besieged them. So they manage to surround this Alfonso VIII with his cavalry. They managed to surround. This is in the year 591. So Alfonso VIII is confused. Muslims are attacking from this side, from this side, from this side. He's completely surrounded. Meantime, Abu Yussuf Yaqub AlMuwahidi, he sends now the second 100,000. Now you can attack. So they attack Khanifillah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Muslims. And Muslims were very victorious in this battle of Arak. So there were two happinesses within this decade. The first happiness was the battle of Hittin that Salahuddin Ayyubi participated in the year 583 of the Hijri calendar. Perhaps you can read upon it later. And this battle of Arak in the year 591 of the Hijri calendar, the scholars say between 30,000 and 146,000 enemies lost their lives in this battle. Thereafter, Khanifillah, Abu Yussuf, he takes the ghanima, 80,000 horses, 100,000 mules, tents, swords, shields, gold, so much ghanima, and he divides it. How is the ghanima divided? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ. It's divided fifths. 80% is distributed with the army. The person who's walking is given a share. The person who's on a horse is given 3 shares. 80% is distributed to the army. 20% goes to the treasury of the Muslims for the imam to use as he pleases. So he takes this 20%, he goes to Ishbiliya, Khanifillah, and he builds the Grand Mosque of Sevilla, of Ishbiliya. This is one of the largest mosques, a mosque that has the minara. Minara is almost 200 meters long. That mosque is still there till today, but it was turned from a mosque to a cathedral. The Catholics took over, but they couldn't. They were amazed by the development. They can't destroy this development. These Muslims reached such a high level of sophistication, they can't destroy it. So he built this mosque of Ishbiliya, and he went back to rule North Africa, Khanifillah. Khanifillah, in the year 595 of the Hijri calendar, after besieging the city of Tulaytala, he wanted to take over Tulaytala that was lost to the Muslims in the year 478, but he was not able. He besieged for years. Then he signs a peace agreement with the kingdom of Castile for 10 years, 10 months and 10 days, as was the period of Hudna. He goes back and he passes away, Khanifillah, in the year 595 of the Hijri calendar. Khanifillah, this is one of the greats of Islamic history, Abu Yusuf Yaqub AlMansoor AlMuwahidi. The Imam Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi, just for benefit, one day he had a problem with the Mediterranean. There's a sea called the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. So the Crusaders were attacking Jerusalem, they were attacking Palestine from the Mediterranean, from the Red Sea. And he doesn't have a navy. So he writes a letter to Abu Yusuf Yaqub AlMansoor AlMuwahidi. He says, من صلاح الدين الأيوبي إلى أمير المسلمين Abu Yusuf Yaqub AlMuwahidi. Salahuddin calls this young man Amir al-Muslimin, the leader of the Muslims, showing the great respect and the great status that this man had. This Ikhwanifillah is one of the greats of our history. He passed away in the year 595 of the Hijri calendar, and his young son, who was only 18 years of age, took over leadership of the Muslims, and this was a weak leader, Ikhwanifillah, and we shall look thereafter what happened when this man took over and the great loss that led to our eventual defeat and expulsion of Andalus, the Battle of Iqab. This is what we shall look at in the forthcoming lecture. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.